We have tons of NHL news and rumors to take a look at in today's video. In today's offseason trade speculation, we're taking a look at the newly eliminated New York Rangers. Could their former first overall pick be getting a fresh start and new scenery next year, plus some other veterans that could be on the move in that organization? Plus, we're going to take a look at top prospect Isaac Howard of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Speculation around him possibly being traded, where he could end up if they do proceed with that. And the Montreal Canadiens, we're going to be taking a look at one of their defensemen who seems to have lost the trust of the head coach, and would he be a trade target this offseason as well? Plus, we have news from the NHL waiver wire. A couple of longtime veterans are playing their final NHL games today ahead of retirement. Lots of injury updates, several prospect signings, and a big playoff update with several teams inching closer to clinching or being eliminated today coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here in today's video, and unfortunately I need to start the video off with another piece of sad news. We've had a couple of NHL executives and the broadcasters pass away here recently, only in their 60s, with Ray Shero and Greg Millen both passing away this past week. And now we have word that Toronto Maple Leaf former general manager and scout, longtime employee of the Leafs, Gerry McNamara, has passed away at the age of 90. McNamara had a long-lasting effect on the Leafs. Of course, he did play there briefly during his playing days. Got hired on later as a scout. Was a GM of the early part of the 80s. If you're an older fan or was around watching the Leafs play during that time frame, you might even recall some battles he had with former head coach John Brophy at the time. But he was responsible, or at least given a lot of credit, for bringing in Boreas Salming during his scouting days. Of course, Salming came over in the early 70s, and of course, he was the GM when they were drafted first overall in 1985, and of course, selected Leafs legend Wendell Clark. So McNamara had a long-lasting effect on that franchise. A very well-respected, well-liked individual, and sadly has passed away. So certainly want to offer our condolences to his friends, family, and colleagues around the NHL. Hopefully, we don't get any more sad news of anybody else passing away that's connected to the NHL here for a while. It's been a tough week with lots of news in that regard. As I mentioned, we have lots of other news to cover here today. Let's get through this. A lot of this is going to be quick, so pay attention, listen closely. There's a lot to cover here. Waivers news. Yesterday, we had the Kraken have John Hayden and Cale Fleury on waivers. They've both cleared, reassigned to the American Hockey League, so no claims, no changing of teams, anything in that regard, and there's no new waivers here today. We got big news out of Edmonton regarding an injury and a signing. The Oilers are going to possibly be without Mattias Ekholm for the rest of the regular season for sure. He may not even be able to play in the playoffs now. Of course, we know he came back against the Sharks last night. Went back and forth a couple times. I'm not sure. We don't really know the full extent of what was going on, but he did leave the game, didn't return. They also lost Zach Hyman, and we don't have a further update on Hyman right now, but of course his availability in question is certainly going to be another player to watch. But Ekholm, the word is that it's a fairly serious injury, and he might not be able to come back for the playoffs, which is really unfortunate for a team that was poised to try to repeat last year and go on another run to the Stanley Cup final, and hopefully this time come home with the trophy. It's going to be tough to do that without in my opinion, their best defenseman, best well-rounded defenseman both ends of the ice, the guy who defends the best, and it just has had such an impact on that team since they traded for him. So that's terrible news for Edmonton. They also signed a 21-year-old prospect goalie from Sweden, 6'5" goaltender Samuel Jansson, who gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He was originally a 5th-round pick of the Oilers back in 2022 and played this past year in Sweden's second league, where he was named goaltender of the year. So certainly had a great season and is ready to, I think, by the looks of things, to make the jump to North America. So it's an interesting goalie prospect to enter the mix there for Edmonton. Of course, the Sharks today recalled Thomas Bordeleau, so he looks to be getting a little bit of NHL action before the season finishes out. St. Louis Blues are going to be without defenseman Phil Broberg tonight. He's going to miss the game due to personal reasons. They're on the road. He had to head back home for something, personal, family related that was going on. So we don't know the full extent there. Carolina had a good day today, of course, picking up another victory, and also got William Carrier back in the lineup, who's missed the past 3 months with injury. So obviously get him healthy and back in the lineup before the playoffs is a nice boost for them. The Canucks today had to recall goaltender Nikita Tolopilo and forward Ty Mueller. It's my understanding that Thatcher Demko was ill and forward Max Sasson is banged up, so both of those guys won't be available. The Anaheim Ducks today signed prospect Ian Moore to a 2-year ELC. The 23-year-old recently completed his 4th year at the Harvard University with the Harvard Crimson. 6'3", 203-pound defenseman will sign a contract that's going to start this year. So this year and next year. So Moore will basically get into NHL action here right away, and we'll see. I mean, that means he's going to be eligible for a second contract sooner than later. But obviously, Ian Moore, an older prospect coming out of college after 4 years. The Chicago Blackhawks today also signed another prospect leaving college. That's Aiden Thompson. He gets a 2-year ELC. Thompson had a strong run at the University of Denver. This one actually starts next year, and he's going to be on an amateur tryout for the remainder of this year with their AHL affiliate. The 23-year-old was originally a 2022 third-round pick. We also got word today that the Red Wings, one of the Red Wings' top prospects, Axel Sandin Pellikka, is coming and make the jump to North America. His season over in Sweden came to a close, and he's going to be joining the American Hockey League team in Grand Rapids for the remainder of the year. In Florida, also signed Jack Devine to a 3-year ELC, who had a really solid year at the University of Denver. He was originally a 7th-round pick back in 2022 and led the NCAA in scoring this past year with 57 points. As I mentioned, it's also the final game tonight for a couple of NHL veterans. One, we knew Pat Maroon was retiring in Chicago, but we also did not know that defenseman Alec Martinze was also going to be announcing his retirement as well. Both players are playing their final game for the Blackhawks and in their NHL careers this evening. And then, of course, the Blackhawks do have a 2-game road trip after this, but they're not going on the road to finish out the season. Their final game will be at home tonight. So certainly Maroon and Martinze have had phenomenal careers. Both are Stanley Cup champions. Except in the case of Maroon, when we first found out he was retiring, I was like, there was a point in Maroon's career before it really took off that he thought it was over, it was going to be over, and he extended his career, won multiple Stanley Cups, and really carved out a niche role for himself, being a bottom 6 forward for the last number of years. So good on Maroon to do that. Long-lasting effect on the NHL, been a good teammate and well-liked, respected player around the league, and same with Alec Martinze, of course, during his time with Los Angeles, where he had his most success, had a good run in Vegas as well. Obviously, Martinze has multiple cups on his name, including a Stanley Cup winning goal as well earlier in his career. So both guys will hang up the skates after tonight. Now, as I mentioned as well, a couple other quick updates when it comes to the playoff race. Of course, tonight we have, as I record this game, Montreal and Toronto are doing battle. If the Canadiens can pull off a victory, they will clinch their spot, and all the spots in the Eastern Conference will be spoken for, but that may not be the case. If they don't win against Toronto, then it could drag on a little bit longer. Earlier today, the Columbus Blue Jackets hammered the Washington Capitals with a 7-0 win, so the Blue Jackets are still very much alive. They will need Montreal's help to lose a bunch, and then, of course, they have to keep winning to have any shot at catching the Canadiens, but they're probably the team that's probably best positioned to even have a chance. The odds are still very, very favorable for Montreal to get in. It's unlikely that they're going to lose everything here down the stretch, but they still have to get their points here and, make sure that it doesn't go down in a bad way here. But with the Blue Jackets winning today, the Red Wings won last night as well against Tampa, so they're both still alive. The Islanders and the Rangers both lost today, so they're now eliminated. So both New York teams are out of the playoffs, so they only have 2 teams chasing Montreal. But like I said, they can control their own fate with a win tonight and take care of themselves and get themselves in. At this point, it's most likely that they will remain in the wildcard 2 spot now that they have a 5-point gap between them and Ottawa, which is in wildcard 1. After last night's game, Montreal losing to Ottawa last night, they're going to come out hungry, I'm sure, tonight against the Leafs and want to take care of that last playoff spot. Ivan Demidov not yet in the lineup for Montreal. It's expected that he could play in their next game on Monday, which I believe is against the Chicago Blackhawks. In the Western Conference, Minnesota can also clinch a spot tonight here with a victory. The Calgary Flames are really the only team that's left that's not eliminated in the Western Conference that's chasing down Minnesota or St. Louis. They've been on a good run, but the Flames are kind of running out of roadway here to kind of get this taken care of. But again, Montreal, Minnesota, and St. Louis kind of control their own fate. If they, take care of their own business and get some points, then the Flames won't be able to catch them, and they'll have their spots clinched, and then all the playoff spots will be spoken for. Of course, the NHL's regular season winds down this coming Thursday, with Saturday being the first of the playoff action. We do not have a playoff schedule as of yet, of course, because all the matchups are not completely set. We do know it's going to be Carolina versus New Jersey. That's the only one so far that's official right now. I am going to be doing the NHL Bracket Challenge as a community again, so look for that. Probably, I would suspect maybe tomorrow I'll have all the information posted on our community tab here on the YouTube channel, and I'll likely talk about it in tomorrow's video. Once it's all set up, we can, again, have some fun as a community and as a channel community here, and just kind of submit our brackets and see who can have the most correct predictions here for the 2025 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog had a good night last night with his return to play. Of course, he's been sent down to the American Hockey League on a conditioning stint with the Colorado Eagles AHL club. Had a good game, was named first star. Like I said, he had several teammates and management there to watch him, and had a good night overall. Like he said, after being named first star, get to do some interviews post-game, and said that he was feeling good. He was tired, of course, because he hadn't played a hockey game in over 1,000 days. And you can't simulate, that full intensity like you can in a practice or whatnot. Like, you can skate in practice, but it's not the same. So clearly, exhaustion was, what he was talking about, but he said the body and the knee felt good, which was very, very positive. The Eagles are also playing tonight, so he's playing Game 2 tonight. I don't know if there's going to be a third game or not. He can play up to 3 before he's recalled. Obviously, they're not going to recall him during the regular season, because I don't think they have the salary cap space anyways. But if he does, make it and it makes himself available for round 1 of the playoffs, that would be a massive boost here for the Avalanche. But we'll see how tonight goes. Likely have an update after the game and see where things go tomorrow. Now, we also got word today. This actually, the news came out, I think it was maybe about 2 weeks ago, but it's the first I've seen of it today. But there was an article I found through Sportsnet that the NHL's launched an internal app for the teams. Now, this is not something that the outside world and fans and public like us will have access to, but they created an app for internal use for teams to be able to manage their rosters, contracts, contract clauses, salary cap, all that stuff. Now, obviously, we know, I think it was Washington that bought Cap Friendly. So I'm not sure. It was kind of weird how Washington bought that, and then obviously, the league now comes out with this. Anyways, but I wonder if it was a waste of money for the Capitals. I mean, I know that the guys that were running the site that went to work for the team were good resources, so they probably value them very muchly that way. But anyways, this app, it's kind of almost to me like, it's like, okay, this is a good idea, but considering that what happened with the Ottawa Senators being punished and losing a first-round pick because of the Dadonov modified no trade information getting kind of lost in translation or lost in the shuffle or what have you. I'm not saying the Sens weren't guilty, because clearly, for whatever reason, it wasn't either disclosed or wasn't, I'm not sure what went down, because nobody was there, but this is like an admission to me that we didn't have a good enough system, and we don't want to have another situation like that happen. So if everybody has access to all this stuff, then what won't happen. So I do wonder if that will give any fuel to fire to Ottawa owner Michael Landauer to fight that at all. I know we haven't. The Senators are very unlikely to forfeit their first-round pick this year. I think they're still maybe hoping there's some kind of outside chance that the league decides to alter the punishment. But we know when they were punished, which came down last year right after Landauer bought the team, that they had to give up a first-round pick sometime in the next 3 years. This summer will be the second draft that have come up since that happened. Listening to Michael Landauer speak earlier, he expected that he said it was going to be up to general manager Steve Staios, but he suspected that they probably wouldn't be giving it up this year, but they're going to analyze themselves on what they think they might be able to get at the draft for what kind of players are going to be available. Because obviously they're going to be picking lower this year than they have in a while, considering they're a playoff team now, and it's going to depend on how far they go in the playoffs. But it's going to be in the second half of the draft. That much we do know. So, it could be 17, 18. It could be lower if they have a better playoff run. So, they got to analyze, is that player that we can get worth, taking the pick, or should we give it up and take our chances that the crop that we get to pick from next year might be stronger? But as he also said, he expects that the team can continue to get better and be stronger next year, maybe finish even higher in the standings, and, it could be picking even lower next year than they do this year, so it probably makes more sense to wait. And like I said, I honestly think it's worth them waiting just to see if they can continue to barter with the NHL to see if there's any chance that they would be able to get the punishment change, which I don't think the team is holding their breath there for any reason at all. Now, as I mentioned, with looking at some of the offseason speculation, we're going to start with the New York Rangers. Lots to talk about the Rangers. Of course, they were the President's Trophy winners last year, went deep in the playoffs, and now this year, they don't make it. They're the fourth team in NHL history to win the President's Trophy one year and to miss the playoffs the next. It's not a common thing. It really isn't. But it's also the first time in NHL history, too, that the Rangers, Bruins, and Penguins have all missed the playoffs at the same time. If you think about how long, of course, the Rangers and Bruins have been original six teams. The Penguins have been in the league a long time. So during that 10 years since the Penguins have been in the league, that's never happened. Those markets are usually always pretty strong. And, it's just one of those crazy things. Usually, those are three markets that have been pretty strong really for quite a long time. If you date back to like the Lemieux era when they got really strong in Pittsburgh, they kind of had some lulls there. But in the Rangers and Bruins, like I said, they're a team that you don't often see kind of take a big step downwards. I mean, the Rangers did go through a rebuild a few years back, but that didn't really, kind of jump-started things as well by getting some good draft lottery luck. They drafted first overall. They drafted second overall. They made some big trades, free agent signings. They really accelerated things there. And now we're at a point where they're kind of questioning everything again. But the article I want to take a look at is a New York Post from Molly Walker, wondering if the team could consider moving Alexis Lafreniere. Now, we know the team is going to undergo changes. There's no doubt. We do already hear lots of speculation about the future of head coach Peter Laviolette. Is he going to be let go? That's a big question mark. So far, the consensus we're hearing from insiders is that Chris Drury is expected to probably stay on. But, you got to think the heat's turned up on him now for sure. If he is going to remain in the role and hires another coach, there's no way he survives firing that coach. You wouldn't think, just based on how things typically go, because that'll be the fourth coach during his tenure, the third one that he's hired. Most GMs don't get that. And he's got what I would refer to as an impatient owner who demands excellence and demands a high result and isn't really all that fond of, not meeting expectations, we'll say. So, obviously there's all that stuff. We've heard about the veterans. We knew in the early part of the year, there was the Trouba and Kreider's names were out there. Trouba's now gone. There's still an expectation that Chris Kreider's most likely playing his final games as a Ranger and is going to be moved in the offseason. It's expected they're probably going to talk to Mika Zibanejad about waiving. Doesn't mean they get deals done for everybody here because it's going to be complicated, of course, based on contracts, trade protection, all that stuff. But I do think it's fair to say that management needs to take some onus and ownership here of how things were handled. I think they really kind of screwed things up with how the things going back to the Barclay Gaudreau thing and how that was handled. That didn't sit well with the players and it didn't sit well with the team, and it just kind of screwed everything up. And then all of a sudden you start hearing about Captain Jacob Trouba, that they want him gone, and then Kreider's name is out there. It's not a wonder why things were probably all messed up, and you kind of question some of their effort levels. They're probably thinking, if you don't want me, why should I be trying as hard? Which still is kind of complicated, but at the end of the day, the Rangers are a team that it kind of been messed up all year, and I think they need a reset in the best way possible, and there's going to be changes. That. We've heard about K-Andre Miller. We haven't heard a lot about Alexis Lafreniere, but Molly Walker's rationale here is that, wondering have they been like a mismanagement with their young players? Look at Kakko. Kakko has thrived in Seattle. Lafreniere had a better season last year, gets a big extension. Look at this year, takes a big step back, 45 points. That's not what they signed him for. He needs to be better than that. K'Andre Miller, another player to watch as well. Do they want to sign him as he made himself, endeared enough to the organization to get the money he's going to be looking for? But Lafreniere is definitely the bigger name. If you look at another prospects in the organization, even Brennan Hoffman, who was a first rounder, again, not far enough along, you would think, where he should be. And obviously, they just signed Gabe Perreault out of college. Gets a couple games and he's a healthy scratch. Like, get him back in the lineup. Like, I just don't understand what they're doing and how a lot of their young players have just not really worked out. Will Cooley's been pretty decent, but the vast majority of them have not. And that it can't be a coincidence to me that all these guys, especially when you see them move along and like Kako and have success elsewhere, it's not the player. It's the role they're given. It's how they've been developed, all the coaching. It's a combination of all of it. I'm not saying the players don't need to take any ownership of it, but, it really makes you wonder. And a Lafreniere trade, would it be complicated right now because of the contract? Maybe. But if teams are convinced, like this article suggests, that, really a fresh start in another franchise might be the best thing for him. If you look at how much talent he has shown at times and everything, I don't think it would be that complicated. I think teams would make a deal for Lafreniere. So I'd be curious to see if they go down that road. And if they want to bring something back of substance, then certainly you're going to have to trade something of value, right? You get to get value, you got to give value. And it could be a real way to shake things up. I honestly wonder that this Rangers team could look incredibly different next year. So possibly a new coach, and there's a lot of players that have that question mark over themselves, think, are they going to be back? Obviously not everybody's going to go. A lot of these players we're talking about, some will go, some won't, but it's certainly a complicated situation there. I don't know how the best way for Chris Drury to handle things, assuming he's still the general manager, but yeah, Lafreniere's name is now out there, according to Molly Walker, wondering if that's really something that they need to explore to help him unlock his potential. For one, the best thing for him, and maybe it's the best thing for the team if they can really shake things up. And of course, the only problem is they're going to want, if they traded Lafreniere, they're going to want a top young player coming back. I can't help but wonder, and this is just me spitballing here. There's no information out there to suggest this being discussed or anything, so take this with a grain of salt. But if Vancouver wanted to move Pettersson, I would think a player like Lafreniere would be high on their radar. His former agent, Emily Castonguay, works for the Canucks. I'm sure it would be heavily endorsed. I'm not saying that Canucks are going to move Pettersson. He's also confirmed to be done for the season as well, by the way, if I didn't mention that earlier. But, would that be a case now? Massive contracts. It wouldn't be, one for one. It would, I'm not saying it's a one for one deal, even trade or anything like that, but just something to think about. So we'll see. But the Rangers will be a fascinating team to watch here in a few days' time when they're officially in the offseason mode. What all the stuff that's going to be coming out of the organization and the speculation about changes, they're going to be running rampant. Now, Isaac Howard, another name that might be new to some of you, but, a former first-round pick of the Tampa Bay Lightning a few years ago, dominant college player, won the Hobey Baker Trophy this year. After 3 years in college, is supposed to be returning to Michigan for a fourth year, which I don't think is really what he wanted. He wanted to sign in Tampa. They could not come to terms on an agreement. Based on an interview he conducted, he said it wasn't that he was demanding NHL time or anything like that. So made me think that it's really must be boiled down to a lot about money and the different bonuses that rookies can have built into their ELCs. That if he's not demanding NHL time, to me that is something that makes sense. But a lot of people are speculating that the Lightning are probably going to look to trade him. If they're going to probably have a lot less faith and confidence down that they can get him signed. And as we get into the offseason, it's probably closer to the draft. Could he be a player that they either move for a first-round pick or another young player who they can get under contract or it's already signed? So some teams out there that are rumored to be possible destinations for Isaac Howard, should they go down that road, would be the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Blackhawks, the Bruins, the Red Wings. We know Boston and Detroit, two teams that are, they have a little bit of youth, but mostly more of a veteran group there. Detroit's younger than Boston for sure, but both teams are going to be having, seasons that they're not happy with and are going to be looking for some changes, and they probably would both like to inject some more youth. The Red Wings, to me, are a team that they do have some good youth, but you can never have too much of it. And they do have some veterans I know they'd probably like to move on from. So, we'll see. I mean, I don't know if they have enough youth that they couldn't squeeze in a guy like Howard because he's a really good player. In Boston's case, definitely would have room for him there. Pittsburgh and Kyle Dubas is going to be looking to add a lot more guys like this as well. So, prime destination. I just don't know we don't know really at this point what Tampa's going to want, if they're going to for sure do this, and if so, what the asking price is going to be. The Blackhawks are another team, like I said. They've got a lot of their younger players were college players that have recently left and signed. We're going to probably get a much better idea where this rebuild is at for Chicago next year. Now, a lot more of them are with the organization and playing at the pro level. But again, they don't have prospects to the point that they couldn't afford to take on a guy like this. So we'll see what happens with Isaac Howard in Tampa, but it could be a name to watch here as the offseason isn't too far away. And in Montreal, again, for a number of games now, Arbor Xhekaj has been a healthy scratch. Even after a loss last night, I'm surprised to see that Marty St. Louis didn't make any lineup changes in their game tonight with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I know he probably likes that lineup, and for the most part, they've won. They previously won 6 games in a row before the loss against the Senators last night. But you would think it might have been an opportunity after sitting out a long stretch to get a guy like Xhekaj back in the lineup to get a little bit of game action under his belt before the playoffs. So that tells me that, for one, they've probably lost some trust between him and the coach, and it's all relates to his defensive mistakes and miscues. They love his physicality. They love the fact that he can fight, and he is one of the better scrappers in the league. I'll give him his credit on that front. But defensively, he does typically make a lot of mistakes, and a couple of the mistakes he made when he was last in the lineup were really big, glaring defensive miscues. So, this makes me wonder if he's not going to be in the top 6 to play when it comes time for the playoffs, assuming they get this clinched here and get in, which I believe they will. They have 6 guys playing ahead of them. What does that mean for the offseason when they have more guys coming, right? Now, could there be some turnover on that blue line? It's certainly possible. You don't know if David Savard's going to be back. He's a free agent, veteran guy. I'm pretty sure, I know a lot of fans they seem to give a lot of crap to Mike Matheson, but I don't see him going anywheres. You got Hudson, you got Gooley, Struvel's been in there a lot lately. It's hard to say, like with guys like Reinbacher and Mayu coming up and a few others in the mix there. Is Xhekaj still part of the top 6? I'm not so sure, which makes me think that he could be a trade piece. And obviously, if you look at the Canadians, the 2 glaring spots for me for them this offseason are going to be down the middle at center. They're going to probably want to make a big splash to find a proper number 2 center to play with Ivan Demidov. I think you want to leave your top line of Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky together, and I think you need to find a centerman for Demidov. I think that's top priority if I'm Kent Hughes and the staff there. And secondly, backup goaltending. Right now, I know they lost faith in Primo, but he's done well since going back to the minors. At least he has the last time I checked in on him. Dobish had a good run, but then he had a really not so good run. His last game was good. We'll see how he does against the Leafs tonight. But do they believe in either of those guys as a backup full-time goaltender for Montembeault? Montembeault's been quite good. But I think they wouldn't be surprised. I think they need a veteran backup goalie to work with Montembeault, and they've got Dobish as a potential number 3. Maybe Primo moves on this offseason. Hard to say, but I think that's, if I'm Montreal, that's likely what I'm looking at, and Xhekaj might be a trade piece to help you get some of those pieces. So let me see what happens, and be interesting to watch here. We'll be a little while before we have a better idea for Montreal, since they do appear to be playoff bound. But once they're out, once their season comes to a close, we'll have a lot more insight on what they're likely going to be doing. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.